Welcome to the First Five Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Corey, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Drew Gotro.
And today in the studio, we've got a long time coming guest, big player in the scene, hosts comedy shows, been on some good book shows, good friends with the folks out in Lake Charles and some shows out there as well. Please welcome to the podcast, Garrett Hebert.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, y'all. I've been a long time listener. I love the pod.
Very cool, man. You know, when we were getting ready to start, we were talking about, I think I asked you, how was the drive? Just naturally thinking about you coming from Baton Rouge, but I know where you live. And so you're a Lafayette boy, but we were talking about how you kind of have like dual citizenship. Mm-hmm. So what's that like?
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, right? And I have a lot of people in Baton Rouge who also forget that I live in Lafayette, and I just travel I travel past two bridges just to get here there. And it's one of those things where, I don't know, people think that I'm going to be going from Lafayette and I'm a Lafayette comic, and some people think that I'm a Baton Rouge comic. I mean, I've always considered myself a Lafayette comic at heart. This is where I've started. I started at the beer garden, and then just slowly kind of kept going to Baton Rouge, and then ended up inheriting the station host gig. And so a lot of people who start with Baton Rouge, they kind of come in and they just assume I've always been a Baton Rouge guy, you know?
For sure.
So.
And I think the fact that you took that gig says a lot, because for one thing, it says that the station and the Baton Rouge scene is worth commuting out there and committing yourself to kind of having to go out there every week and do that show, because it's a long show. You have a lot of comics that come out. And it also says kind of like where you are at about caring about comedy. You know, it kind of like it's certainly a step in the right direction of kind of stating how your relationship to comedy, that you're willing to take a travel hosting gig. So, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's like whenever I first started doing comedy, I mean, as we all kind of do in our comedy careers, we were just trying to get our feet wet. Mm-hmm. You know, you get exposed to this big world of comedy. You want to go ahead, do as many sets as you possibly can, try to crack this code that is comedy as soon as you can, because your thought is, oh, I'm gonna do comedy for 2 months, I'm gonna blow up, and then I'm gonna go start touring or something like that. And of course, we all know we all get humbled really quickly when we realize this is gonna take a lot longer than we thought it will. Right. So I was just trying to find every mic I could possibly go to, and at the time when I started comedy, we were just fresh out of COVID. So I'm about 2 years. I've been doing comedy for about 2 years now, I want to say, maybe a little more than 2 years. So any advice I give, just know, like, y'all are the freshmen of comedy. I'm like a sophomore, you know? I'm like, oh, I got it all figured out. I'm the sophomore. I know what's up, but really, I have no clue what's going on either, you know? Although I feel like y'all have probably graduated at this point into the next level of comedy, if that makes sense.
Next level of not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
That's how I feel.
You know enough to know that you don't know enough.
When when I start to feel good about it, and then you have a night.
The comedy gods
lets you know.
Those comedy gods, they give you a little something. They give you that little carrot on the stick. They make you feel good. And as soon as you start to get a little confidence, a little ego boost, they love to just take it away from you. But no, just to answer your question, though, Baton Rouge. So, I mean, I just kept going out there because at the time, all they had was the worst beer garden. That was the only really mic they had. Jacob and Lake Charles wasn't really doing too much. So if I wanted to do more than one mic a week, I had to travel to Baton Rouge. Slowly made friends with everybody, kind of assimilated into the community. And then, lucky enough, I was just so consistent at it, they decided to give me the hosting job.
Yeah. Now, I've noticed, I've talked to a lot of hosts about this. It's kind of I guess it's beating a dead horse at this point, but when you host, do you find that it's hard to work on your material, like the balance?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, because you kind of want to make sure that the show gets started on the right foot. You want to go ahead and do some jokes that you know are at least going to have some kind of reception. You know, you don't want to be doing some experimental, like, what the hell was that? That was so dumb. I think Tyler does a phenomenal job. He does his great host sets. He kind of gets people in the mood and stuff like that. So, for me, it's more about just kind of, I'll probably do more I hate to use the word, but more crowd worky type stuff where I'm kind of just engaging the audience, trying to get everybody's attention to the stage for the comedy show they're about to see. Yeah. And usually in my normal sets, I don't like to do crowd work stuff. It's more I want to do the stuff I've prepared, if that makes sense.
For sure. Now the station mic, I think, is kind of known for its volume. It's kind of like a Mexican restaurant, like they're just moving people through there so quick. So do you ever find that you're like tempted to cut the list off at some points? Because I know it's not uncommon for there to be like 30 comics and for there to do maybe like 3-minute sets, 4-minute sets, depending on how many people. Do you guys do 5-minute sets that much?
Very rarely.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you the last time we've done a 5-minute set.
Yeah.
Typically it's 4 minutes, sometimes 3. If we start to hit that 30 to 35 people mark, it just gets a little crazy. We've been kind of cracking down on people being on time. We say, if you're not going to be there by 8:30 or 8:45, to at least, message somebody, let them know to put you on the list, because we don't want people coming in after the show started going, hey, can I get on the list? It's like, no, I mean, you got to be here. And also, I think it's just important for comics in general. I think the hang before and after is important, and there needs to be a level of professionalism, I think. But yeah, I mean, we've turned people away only because they weren't punctual. But honestly, I pride ourselves in having a low barrier of entry. I won't turn anyone away who wants to do a set, as long as they sign up on time.
Sure.
They could be crazy. And then, I'll say, hey, look, get up there, get on stage, see what you got. But yeah, I mean, back when I first took it over, we had maybe about 7 or 8 signups, and now it's starting to get to that 25, 30. And so, yeah, cutting down time. It's that yin and yang, but it's kind of needed, because I find most comedy audiences only have about 2 hours of comedy in the tank. If you start to go past that, it's way too much. They get fatigued. I think, honestly, the sweet spot is 1.5 hours, 1 hour 45 for a full-on comedy show.
Yeah, and if you're going to keep around that threshold, but also keep the barrier low, then you just got to give everybody less time. And it's just the only way you can do it. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of competitive places out there. I mean, Drew, haven't you, I know you watch a lot of podcasts and Kill Tony and stuff like that, or situations where I think you would probably back me up on this. There, some of the bigger open mics and ones that are bigger opportunities, especially ones in larger markets, they give shorter time slots, don't they?
Yeah, that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
A lot of shorter time slots, or even if it is not shorter, I've heard that, in some scenes they're not friends like we are. Like people are competition. And none of us, I don't feel like we really see each other that way.
No, absolutely. That's what I really love. I mean, honestly, about Baton Rouge and Lafayette and the Lake Charles scene, specifically, is that I feel like we really work to build each other up. I find we're very open to new comics. Even if they don't get a good reception right away, I feel like the amount of people who are out there who want to coach them to get better, to stick around, to get through those initial humps of comedy, I think it's phenomenal. And I think it speaks to how many people we have on the scene now that we maybe didn't have 2 years ago. Yeah, and I think it's great.
Yeah, we like to see people put in the work.
Yeah.
And then when it's a lot more beneficial to have for people around you to do well. It pushes you too,
Oh, absolutely. We get better as a unit. That's what I love about this place, man. It really is something special compared to, like, say, like a LA scene, or even some of the Texas scenes. I've kind of noticed they go on their smoke breaks the entire time until it's time for them to go up. But no, I love the camaraderie that we have here. It's something special.
Yeah, and I think you do a pretty good job of consistently trying to foster that. Like, anytime I've gone out to the station, you always make sure to remind all the comics, like, hey, why don't you come inside and watch your comrades do their work, which I think is great. And I know that people are going to differ on that. I don't know, maybe it's just church background, but the whole like idea of like, let's all support one another kind of thing, that's sort of something that is more familiar to me.
Absolutely.
So I can kind of get with you on that.
I see both sides of it too. But that's the thing, like you said, a lot of the time, the reason, like, if people are outside, it has a lot to do with like how good the scenes are. It's because they want to spend as much time hanging and talking as they can.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not be disruptive to the comedian inside. But understand what it's like when you're in there and
Yeah.
there's nobody, just no one in the room. It sucks.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we could either have a night where everybody's in, everybody's attentive, and we've all been on an open mic where it's just been electric, right? The air's electric, everyone's laughing, the crowd's into it, the comics are into it, everyone's inside just listening to the next person, and person after person is it's killing. Like we just had like that Thursday, this past Thursday, I feel like everybody that went up that night did amazing. And I think part of that is just people just listening in, staying attentive, being ready to hear what's being said. So it's like you could either have a night where everybody wins because everybody's paying attention or having fun, or you could have everybody divided and then it's not, as cool of a night.
I just don't want them to I don't want them to really push it too hard.
Yeah.
Because you see, people come in on their own, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the thing is like, I don't want in the back of my mind, I don't like the idea of this captive audience. You know what I mean?
Hostage by comedy.
Yeah, I don't want to do comedy to hostages.
Yeah, I get what you're just like. It definitely has to be organic.
And then when it goes bad, I'll be just like, oh well, they wouldn't want to be in there anyway. Yeah. When really it's just I did poorly.
No, you don't want to lash out at the comics being outside. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go out and I'll be like, all right, we're getting this comedy train rolling. That's the metaphor I always use at the station because it's a giant train cart. Like, we're getting this comedy train. We're pulling it out the station. Everybody, get your asses in here. Support your fellow comedian. Come on, let's have a good time. But if people are going out to smoke break, shoot the shit, I'm not gonna, police on them. I get it.
I opened up for Dan St. Germain, and I watched him walk out during my set. So I think it kind of made me not so sensitive to comedians not watch. Like,
well, these big people are doing it,
And I was like 2 months in, I was like,
yeah.
This dude's gonna see how funny I am, and he watched for a little while, and then he just went out the door. Like,
and also just to kind of speak to it, just you know, we're all in the scene. A lot of times we're working on a lot of the times the same jokes, trying to, and maybe just with some slight variants. So if you know someone who's gonna probably say a lot of the same jokes, and it's like, well, I've heard this person say this 1,000 times. Like I get why people decide to head on out for a little bit, maybe take a smoke break, But I don't know. I just like to see when we're all together. I feel like together we're stronger than when we're separated.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just my mentality. But you're right. Don't crack down.
And I think it's a move because I'm both of those people. There's sometimes I'm outside. Oftentimes I'll be outside most of the show, and then other times I'm in there and I'll watch till the end. Yeah, it's just a move. Sometimes I got to get out of there.
No, got almost too much comedy you can take, especially when you do it night after night.
Or it's just I need some air.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
I will pull the shoot right away if the person on stage is just really, really awkwardly bad. Like some people love that, and I totally understand, but it's just, I feel it too much, physically when when it's that awkward. I'll just step out for a minute and come back.
That cringe. I feel like we can all be kind of guilty of that. Yeah. I was really guilty of that as well when I first started doing comedy. I see someone that would not do so well. I'm like, oh, here we go. This person's going up on stage. But honestly, now I've been at it for about 2 years now. I've kind of humbled myself because I've seen those same people who I was like, oh man, this person's coming up on stage. And then I slowly see them progress and get better and better and better until they have the audience in the palm of their hands. And so it's like amazing to see these people grow and develop. So I kind of like seeing the bad comedians because now I'm just like, instead of me like, oh gosh, this is going to be cringy, I'm like, yeah, this will probably be bad, but I can't wait to see where this person is in a year and how much they develop and almost take like this mental snapshot of where they are.
Yeah.
So at least that's my thought on the matter.
For sure.
Yeah, I dig that too.
So Drew, you had mentioned you had a set recently, right? This was, I think it was the thing they did Tuesday night at Atmosphere.
Yeah, Tuesday night, Jacob did his review show, kind of like a Kill Tony thing. And we were supposed to do something new, not necessarily brand new, but something you're working on. So I brought a joke that I had only really did one time, but I never wrote it down, and I was hosting second half, so no one's paying attention. And then I kind of worked on it, but I only really worked on it a little bit that day. And when I did it, it's like still way too long.
Mm-hmm.
It's to where I didn't even really get to the punchline. And there's a whole, like, I had some tags in the beginning, and then there's this big long part where I don't say anything funny. I'm like listing things because I'm trying to drive it into the audience's head, like get them to think of a certain thing or make a certain point. But then it doesn't have a punchline big enough at the end of it, which is just part of the process. But I was like, I thought about it, I was like, that's not a good time to do it though. Like, even though I understood the idea behind it, but then it's like when you have someone out of town on the panel and stuff like that, and they've never seen you before, it's not really a good time to bring out a very, very new joke.
Right.
Yeah.
So I figured in the future, I mean, it's one thing if I'm just working out at an open mic and I've really got to work out this joke. But there's a whole thing. This was there's banter and everything. I couldn't do any of the bantering. I mean, even Jacob, kind of after my time was up, he let me kind of get to the end of it, which they weren't letting anyone do. To where it's almost like it made me feel like that's how disappointed he's like, I'm gonna give you a little bit longer to try to save yourself here, and I did it, and then it's like I couldn't get that out of my head. So then all my rhythm was thrown off, you know? I've been able to be good on my feet before, and I was not at all.
I would say, Drew, you're good on your feet most of the time, especially like when I've seen you get up there and like host, like your ability to just get up there and take almost anything that happens and turn it into a hilarious punchline or a great moment.
Yeah, that's fun. Sometimes I look forward to that more than doing working out a set.
And to kind of go back for, the Tuesday night, something to keep in mind was the whole goal was to do 2 new minutes. It was the point was for it to kind of be a little rough and shaky and not worked out the kinks. Well, that was the point.
One thing that did happen though is there were a few people that originally weren't on that show,
myself included,
and that were supposed to do the open mic after. So they weren't prepared for it.
Yeah.
And some of them did like their best shit.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So it makes it look uneven. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like we're not all doing the same thing, which I didn't blame any of those people. Because they were coming signing for. I can't. You know what I mean? In that moment, whatever they weren't prepared. They had to do whatever they could do. So I'm not blaming any of those people for doing that.
Yeah. But just like you shouldn't blame yourself for doing 2 brand new minutes that you wrote and tried to fine tune that day, and it didn't go knock it out the park like some joke that you've been working months on. Yeah, you know, I think give yourself more credit.
Looking back now, I would have went somewhere closer to in the middle. I would have did a newer joke. I wouldn't have went do like the this is gonna kill him shit. But I would have did something new that was a little bit more worked out than it was. Because I mean and then I figured, and then whenever I looked at it later, and I was like, I don't need to list all these things. I can just kind of sum up in like 3 sentences to get the point across. I'm trying to get across. I don't have to go through this big old long list. The bit's too long for no reason. People are losing. People stop listening, you know?
So it sounds like those 2 minutes you did that night were not a waste of time at all. And it was great you did it because you learned something from it.
Yeah, I think I would have still learned it if I would have did it.
I know.
I think there was a less painful way I could have learned it.
I know. But sometimes we need those painful moments,
and then I don't even know now if I'm going to keep the joke. I might keep it. Basically what it is I'm making a joke about, and it came from a conversation like with my brother-in-law, where, you know, we were talking about Top Gun. And I was like, yeah, the movie's kind of gay. And he got like defensive about it. And I thought that was weird because I was like, dude, how are you you don't notice anything gay about this movie?
You can be my wingman anytime.
Yeah,
I mean, that's chugging cock.
Yeah, I had a few funny tags in the beginning.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was like, and I'm going to give the joke away, but I don't care. But I was saying, it was like his argument was like, but that's just a small part of the movie. And then I list like, this is the manliest day you can have. But then at the end of the day, you go have a homosexual experience. The next day, you can't be like, there's nothing gay about yesterday. You know, like, but I take too long saying it. But at the time, when I was saying it, and there's all these people around, and I had painted the picture that way. Like I went through, look, you wake up in the morning, you have this, and I listed all these really, like, the manliest day ever, and then put that at the end. And everyone laughed so hard at it. And at the time, it sounded like the rhythm of it. Like I remember thinking, like, that sounds the rhythm of a bit. Like that, like even the way I said it just now, like it's got beats.
Yeah.
And it does. But the difference is when you're being funny off stage and you're just talking to people, you have a luxury of time because they're going to listen.
Yeah.
When you're on stage, you don't have the luxury of time. You have an expectation to entertain. And if you go too long without giving them what you're supposed to give them, they start tuning out, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're all guilty of that. You're not the only one.
But
I've had that as well all the time.
I don't know. I might try it for a little while, but at the same time, I might want to drop it because then it seems like I'm doing like, or I don't want anyone to think or to come off like I'm doing like a Shane Gillis impression or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Where I'm just like, that's gay. I don't think like that's the punchline of the joke.
I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think you should just throw it away. I think it has legs from what I heard on the 2 minutes. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Everything that you said about it is valid, but I mean, I think it's a good bit that definitely has some legs to it.
Yeah, for sure. It needs a lot of editing. Yeah.
But you said something that's interesting to me, and I think it's something that's different for how my brain operates, which is getting rid of it, throwing away a bit. Do y'all find that y'all just kind of throw away bits? Like if you find that if a bit does not work, you just kind of toss it away and never use it again? Or do you ever kind of just put it on the back burner and maybe you'll find something later that completes that bit? Because I'm like a hoarder of bits. I never throw away anything.
I'll say yes and no.
Okay.
Because sometimes I'll be like, this bit's no good. It's trash. But there's no way to throw away a bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's always there. Yeah. So it's like even if you crumple up the paper it's written on and throw it away.
Yeah.
There's been bits that I've like threw away. Like I don't like it anymore. I'm not doing it, and I've done them.
Yeah.
Just eventually at some point, like, you know what? Let me just try it again.
Okay. Yeah.
There are sort of corners in your mind that are so dark and deep that they might as well be a trash can. And so I've got jokes that are basically occupying that space. But because I write everything down, every once in a while, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's there. If I could ever figure out a way to like rework that completely.
Yeah.
Like I've got a joke that I just recently redid, and I did it in New Orleans, and I was surprised that it went over well there. But it was the joke started out as me, because I remember telling it at the station, and it kind of like tepid response from the crowd. And it was about cats, and it was about how my wife and my daughter keep like taking home. There's new strays popping up here all the time, and they want me to like tame them and like take them in as pets. And then I get because I remember I posted on Facebook one day just a picture of my hands covered in scars. So the joke is, that I'm like a domestic abuse victim.
Yeah, I love that premise.
Yeah. I like
and so
that
I'm
too.
making excuses when I'm at work. Like, you don't understand. He's a really good cat, and it's an old cliche from the battered wife thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, people don't know that like I grew up in a household where that was common. They don't know that it looks like I'm punching down on domestic abuse victims.
Yeah. It's a great joke. It's relatable. The whole thing. Everyone knows what like wives bringing home animals, and you don't want these animals. But then sometimes you fall in love with them, and then the cats are sons of bitches. And then, like you said, the whole thing about equating it, like making the similarities about like domestic abuse, it's just edgy enough where it's palatable. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where you can still do that you could go on a clean show, and you could probably still do that, and it's not going to be so far out there that people are offended. Or you could do it in front of old people. Well, I don't know. I've found since doing comedy, there's a lot of really old people that will laugh at some dirty shit.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. The thing about that cat joke that I thought was interesting was that it wasn't working because I was waiting until the very end, right before the punchline, to say it's like a domestic abuse victim and then hit him with the punchline.
Yeah.
It's like this really jarring, off-putting thing that I brought up. And then they're immediately supposed to laugh afterwards. They don't even know really whether I'm even coming down on a good side of that topic.
Yeah.
So when I introduced the domestic abuse thing very early
as you go through the joke,
and then give him some time to see that I'm actually going in a cutesy direction with the joke, and then when I hit him with the punchline, then it works.
Yeah. Someone recently they called it like padding the joke, or
yeah,
absolutely. Instead of like, domestic abuse buzzword, ouch.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So just spacing that out, just giving people some room, like an off ramp or an on ramp. It's just so much. I just love the mechanics of jokes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's a great recipe and everything. Like you don't have to punch them in the face. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
like garlic is good as long as you don't have too much garlic.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's not overpowered.
You need the right amount. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Lane Longyaw, he was like a pioneer of comedy in Lafayette, from what I understand, and he was a guest panelist on.
Yeah, that's the reason I think bombing hurt the most. It's because he was there. Yeah, he's never seen me do stand up.
Yeah.
So it didn't have to, since we were doing new stuff. I didn't have to like wow him and show him the best thing. But I mean, it's one of the worst things I showed him, and he even said, he's like, you don't need all that other bullshit. I'm like, last time I did that show, I was on panel. I told someone that too. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like this. It's like this is his first introduction. It's like his first impression of me. It's like, gosh dang, I hate myself. I'm crying in the shower now.
And I was beating myself so much. I was beating myself up in my head so much while I was up there. Which that's another mistake I made. I should have been able, like, whatever happened, just happen and just be in the moment. But I kept thinking, and then I'm like trying, and then I did a thing where I was like, I'm gonna save it, and I threw out like a roast joke at Jacob that I hadn't really thought. I kind of just threw it up in the moment, and it bombed hard, and it was a bad joke, dude, real bad joke, not good at all. And I threw it out to where even Jacob was like, "Is that a bad thing to be or something?" Like,
I'm so confused.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was just, I feel like I overall performed bad.
It was an anomalous.
No. I mean, I had a couple laughs in the during the little interview part, but
it was sort of an anomaly because I remember, like, we found out, I think a little bit beforehand, that Lane had at least heard the podcast before, right? He knew who you were.
Yeah, I found out from Jason a while back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know him until that night, to be honest with you.
So we knew he was a guy that they knew that used to be part of our scene. Was a good comic, and that he was aware of the podcast. And I think Drew was like, didn't you tell me you had like some good stuff queued up for the interview portion?
Yeah, I had figured just like, stuff you could like for like not to do material, just like comebacks and stuff like that. And then once I got up there, I was like, I don't trust my timing or delivery especially after that first roast joke went bad on Jacob. I was like, I don't think I can perform these jokes right now. And I was like, and I liked them. I was like, those jokes are too good for me to fucking disgrace them right now. Like to throw them out right now. It was like, weird. Yeah. I'm keeping them to myself.
Yeah. No, it was a different type of night. It was a hard night to predict. I mean, have you been on roast battles before, Drew? I want to say, you've been on.
No, I've done a roast.
Okay.
And I've done we've done the review before.
Yeah.
I've been in situations. I've been in shit talking situations, but not a straight roast battle.
Yeah. If it makes you feel any better, I also, his name's Lane, was it? Yeah, I called him a great value Jared Leto, and instead of laughs, I got like and he was like, "Wait, that was funny. That was the best roast of the night." And I was just like, dang it. More. That's the worst when you go for a roast and you're hoping for laughter, but people are like, "Oh, too much." I'm like, "Great value, Jared Leto, really?"
Yeah, that was like super tame, but also really good.
I don't know.
I think he was just really funny.
Yeah.
So I guess people were too much on his side because he was destroying me.
Right, that's a good.
He did well that night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really behind the scenes, we knew that the judges were all kind of like looking forward to being like, oh, I'm gonna be super mean. I'm gonna roast. So I went into it thinking like, okay, I just need to be humble because I cannot compete with it. Like when it comes to roasting, I'm no good at it. So I was like, I'm just going to have to go in there humble, try to do a good job and accept whatever roasting that I've got coming to me. So I think we all kind of walked in with it being prepared for that. And then maybe it's the audience that just didn't realize that there's a nice jib jab kind of.
Yeah. It wasn't, there's a certain point where it's not the right time. Like your set went too good, first of all, for anyone to roast you.
And yeah, I appreciate that.
And then most of the roast, really, for us, it's more like they don't really work if people don't know more about you.
Yeah, it's true. We're unknowns.
Yeah. That's like I think most of our roast we throw out is
kind of inside-ish.
Yeah, where if it's not in the right context, it might be harder to be funny.
Yeah.
You don't have people can just roast me and they never met me before. You know, you don't have nothing funny that looks about you. You don't talk weird.
Well, yeah, I think that what people see is like, oh, why is this guy trying so hard? Because like, like if you look like Brad Pitt, you don't have to try. And then other people are like, I'm trying to do something.
That's
and
true.
It's
I make fun of your clothes a lot. Yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah.
That's a weird thing though about like trying hard or like trying to be a try hard or something like that. It's like how you're perceived compared to the jokes you want to tell, right?
Yeah.
It's two different things. Like Drew, I'll tell you, you do a phenomenal job about like knowing like how you initially come across in first impressions and kind of like incorporate that into your jokes and to where you make like punchlines like really pop because like people kind of have this preconceived notion looking at you how you're going to be, and sometimes you feed into that, but sometimes you subvert expectation, which makes it even more funny.
Yes.
And I think that's amazing for you. And Michael, I've seen you really come into your own with this.
Oh.
Because you've kind of, it's almost like you kind of treat comedy like a Rubik's Cube, and you're just trying to solve the code for it to see
true.
where you kind of fall into it, how people perceive you, how you can feed into that, how you can take that, but then also be your own full authentic self. And I gotta say, like within the past few months, I've really seen you start to hit that stride, and it's starting to show in like, I mean, your laughs per minute, people like really being more engaged with you in general, man. I really starting to see you come into that lately.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I've been feeling it, but it's weird when you just, the effort level has been maintained, but sometimes you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So when you get some traction, you can feel it.
It's hard to get yourself in the right headspace sometimes. That's one thing I find is if you're not having fun, or at least good enough at it to make it look like you're having fun.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to do well.
And also, if you're not having fun,
it's hard to be funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're, I mean, obviously you're going to have bad nights, but if you're not in general having fun, why do comedy?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. True.
Especially at an open mic level.
Yeah.
But sometimes it gets that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes if
right.
you're going to be so into what you're doing and wanting it to do well, I haven't had it happen to me, and I forget to have fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm like having like weird sets and stuff. And I'm realizing like, I'm all in my head about the shit. Yeah. You can't, that's not a recipe to be funny.
And then it could feed into itself. And then you go through periods of that and you're just trying to bear the stormy weather for some sunny days later on. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's part of being a comedian, honestly.
Yeah. A lot of psychological abuse.
Yeah. Embracing the shit. Enjoy the suck. And then get out there and try again.
Man, we're really getting into the truth of it right now.
Yeah.
And Drew has said that to me before many times. He said to just kind of like put up with me being down in the dumps and be like, man, if you're not like, you gotta be having fun.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing that and being like, I know he's right. But I think what I figured out was I've started to have like a little bit of like comedy autism for a while where I was like, I thought I knew what was funny. I tried a bunch of things and none of them worked. So now I'm like, oh, I have a massive blind spot. I can't see.
Yeah.
I don't know what's funny. So I've just got to feel my way around in the dark and say things that I don't even necessarily think are funny. Because half the time when people are laughing at other comics, I don't really think they're that impressive. So maybe I'm the fucked up one and I'm going to have to try to do this without being able to know, like trying to shave and you don't have a mirror.
Yeah.
And then when I realized, when I kind of hit the reset button and was like, I'm just going to tell jokes that I just know are funny and are, I'm going to try to write things that are true and authentic, but that I just really believe are funny.
Yeah.
And then that's when it kind of started to.
Absolutely. And that's what I was about to say.
And you start having fun.
Yeah.
Being able to reframe that mindset of, because there's stuff that you as a person think is funny and that you really love, but like you never get a good audience reception. It's just like, I love this joke so much, but people do not in general. And instead of thinking like, well, they think it's not funny, so it must not be fun. No, your opinion matters too as an individual on what you think is funny. Mm-hmm. I just think the reframe needs to happen about trying to communicate what you think is funny to where it translates, like you said, to the audience to where they think it's also funny. Right. And some of that just takes time. It takes writing skills. It takes different deliveries. We see professional comedians like, this joke bombed, but then when I said it this way, or I did this little mannerism with it, look at that, all of a sudden it worked. And maybe it was never the joke to begin with. Maybe the joke was funny all along and you saw what was funny with it to begin with. It just was never translated in the end. And that's something I find I struggle a lot with, is that I have jokes, so many jokes that I personally think are hilarious and I can't wait to share it. And then it would be like, get not the reception I want. I'm like, I hate myself. I'm not a comedian. I'm a fraud. I'm a sham. I don't know what humor is. I'm done in this business. But no, it's just about having that positive reframe, I think.
So I heard somebody, I think we had a comic on early on in the podcast series, and I think I just blurted out some question about like their comedic style. And I realized pretty quickly, because I think the response was something like, well, I'm kind of relying on you to tell me that, as a person who's watching me. Okay. I was like, okay, that's a good point. So I won't ask you what you think your comedic style is. But
I hate when people don't answer our fucking questions.
Let me answer your question with another question.
Yeah, I guess it's your show now.
The first 5 of Garrett. Y'all go share this seat. I'm going to sit in your 2 seats combined, one for both.
Yeah.
I like your style of comedy. I would classify it. I mean, there's definitely puns in there and stuff like
Very
that.
Pun heavy.
Wordplay. I love wordplay. I have noticed that people seem to be less, like the younger crowds seem to be less receptive to wordplay.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and I don't know if that's like, I have this very, very unformed theory that, growing up with the internet and like memes and you having to be able to figure out how to be really funny with words. Yeah. They're all just like, okay, that's not impressive anymore. You have to do something else.
I think listening to like good rap music too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For me personally,
very pun heavy on the rap.
Yeah. It makes you appreciate how much you can do with a word.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I think the younger crowd isn't. Well, even I would also say older. I feel like people in general just don't like puns. And there's a reason they say it's the lowest form of comedy. Besides improv. No, I'm just kidding. I love my improv people. Don't come after me, improv people. I love you. But no, I don't know. I love when people on stage do jokes where I audibly laugh, but also say at the same time, that was so stupid.
Yes.
When I say that and laugh at the same time, that's my type of humor that I like. So when people do that, I love it. And that's what I try to recreate to mixed results. Right?
Yeah.
So
I think there's a general positivity and lightness to your humor that I really appreciate, because a lot of us are just out there in the gutter, like, whether it be literal like sex jokes and stuff or just like dealing with dark topics. I don't know how much do you consciously stay away from that, or do you just do whatever comes out?
So the truth is, I actually have a lot of jokes that I have written about stuff that's more personal to my life that I have not said on stage yet. Like a lot of jokes. And some of it is because I feel like they're not fully formed. Like they're good premises, are good enough premises, and maybe I don't have that, that full package of a joke to present. But a lot of it is just it's stuff that's authentic to me, and a lot of times I kind of shy away from that and kind of go to lighthearted humor because I can kind of say like, okay, if I go and I do this open mic or this show and they don't like the material, it's never, to me, it never feels like, oh, it's not that it has anything to do with me. They just don't like the jokes I said. So if I go back, rewrite, do something else, like I could have potentially won them over in that moment. But whenever I do stuff that would be more personal, more authentic, more like vulnerable, yeah, it's like it starts to feel like, well, if I say these jokes and they don't like it, then they don't like me.
Right.
And that's something I'm trying to slowly get out of. Is to get more vulnerable. And I think it's I hate to say this, but I look like how I look like. Okay. And so if y'all have gotten to know me, I feel like y'all have a good snapshot of knowing what I'm like. But if you have an audience member who's never met me, they're going to think that my stylings, my character, who I am as a person, it's going to be vastly different, than who I actually am, just based off of appearances. So I don't know. Like I try to steer clear. Like, for example, one big thing that pops in my brain is I have, a lot of people don't know this, but I have a sister who's trans. And, I've made jokes about like authentic things, like growing up with someone who's transitioned, who was a brother and now is a sister. But I feel like, big old white guy making some trans jokes, like that's, such a buzzword and such a, like, he's probably lying. He probably doesn't even have a trans sister. He's probably just trying to make these jokes because, well, look at him,
Right.
And so I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess. And I'm slowly trying to break that mold.
Yeah. I would want to sort of dangle a little carrot to sort of bait you into coming out into those waters. Because it is more dangerous and you are more vulnerable when you go and start really digging into your personal life and revealing things about yourself that somebody might stand up and say, you can't say that. There's always a risk of something like that. Yeah. And it is more vulnerable, but there's
oftentimes that's where the best stuff is, though.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But that's a hard thing. I think that's why people that make it in comedy, it takes them years to make it because there's stuff like that. And that in comedy just being hard. But I think it's hard for you to find that stuff. Or like I'll have a bunch of ideas for jokes for like people in my life and my family that I think would be really funny, but I've never said any of it on stage. I've never even like really written it down. It's in my head and worked on it, which I guess I should do that. Just work it out on paper. First. But I've never really worked it out or said it on stage because I'm afraid that if any of those people, I'm afraid a lot of it, if those people would hear me saying it, that they might take it a different way. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
That they might take it as like they might not take it as like I'm saying this about, because the funniest things about people are usually like their characteristics are usually flaws. Yeah. Like they're interesting characteristics, but it's always like, but this flaw makes this person funny, and this is why I love this person. But that would be the thing where that would have to come across like in your face. You know what I mean? To where people wouldn't hear it and be like, I didn't realize you. Where after they hear me say like, wow, I didn't realize that's what you thought of me. That's what I feel like most people would say. You know what I mean?
That person listening in and then being okay.
That I think they would take it as...
okay. Yeah, no, I also understand that. When you get more personal, it kind of... Those people kind of come out back in your life to...
And especially if it's someone that's not familiar with comedy. For the most part. Like, there's so many funny stories I could tell with my dad. But I'm just worried that if he's not, for one thing, he's not used to the context of comedy. But to where, like, I worry too much, he might hear it and take it that I'm saying this stuff because it's funny,
Mm-hmm.
but it's funny things about him that I like, and I want other people, you know what I mean? I'm kind of sharing a thing I love with you.
Yeah, like he might take it as you're airing out dirty laundry on a stage.
Yeah, which the first thing I would have to get it across to an audience first.
Mm-hmm. Of why you think that's funny.
Yeah, to where when an audience would hear it, they're not going to be like, oh, he's talking. They're going to be like, that's funny. Not this guy's talking shit about his dad. You know what I mean? Like, that's like when Tyler makes jokes about his mom.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's all loving. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no one thinks, like, if anything, I think most people are like, oh, probably think he's a good son, you know? And like, oh, his mom, he's close to his mom, you know? But sometimes when you're telling funny things people did or said, if you don't say it or if you don't do it the right way, it could come out that you have bad intentions, you know? I worry about that. I don't want anyone to hear something I said about them and it make them feel bad.
Because that's not the goal of comedy, right?
Right,
it's not to make people feel bad, it's make them feel good. Yeah.
Right.
I 100% understand where you're coming from. Absolutely.
I've had to run a lot of joke ideas past my wife, and I've had to shut some down before I really put too much effort into them because she was like, you're not going to say that about me on stage. And I'm like, yeah. If I really felt like I needed to, we would probably be in an argument about this, but it's like there's just so many other things, many other directions I could go. Yeah. I'll just change it because it's not necessary.
Yeah, if it was something that would be fun, the fact that you're willing to be like, okay, is like, it's not, obviously it's not funny enough anyway, or at least the way you have it now.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but I've had already like been talking, well, like my dad's one example where like me and like a sibling and a friend of mine who knows my dad real well are talking about my dad and saying stuff about my dad and laughing. And this other person who doesn't really know my dad that well is like, I remember this guy got so upset. He's like, I can't believe y'all are being so disrespectful. And we're like, we're not.
That's not.
We're joking around. We would say this stuff to him.
Yeah.
You know? But I worry that he wouldn't get it to where if he'd hear like I'm saying it to other people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might not come off well to other people, and it might not come off well to him.
Absolutely.
Didn't your dad try to get you to tell a street? Wasn't there like a funny anecdote?
Yeah.
I read this in a book.
Someone told him a joke and he wanted me to use it. Which
my dad said
it's kind of dumb, but then when I told him like I was like, well, I can't use that.
Yeah.
And he's like, why not? I was like, it's not my joke. I have to make up my own jokes. He's like, nah, comedians
just steal and then use everyone else's jokes.
And he's like, he doesn't even when he watches like he knows about like most of the comedians he's seen, that is what they do. They're like Cajun comics. That's Cajun comics.
Say,
don't write a lot of original material.
Yeah.
They tell street jokes for the most part. They tell Boudreaux and Thibodeau jokes. That's what he thinks comedy is it's just joke telling.
Yeah.
He doesn't know there's joke writing and everything involved. It's just joke telling.
Yeah.
And I try to, so now, of course, he thinks just like everything else I do, that I'm doing this wrong and I'm hard-headed.
Yeah.
You know?
Have y'all ever run into the exact opposite thing where maybe you fabricate a joke or you do something and then someone hears that joke and thinks it's about them, even though it's a completely fictitious, not real joke?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
I think my jokes have been too absurd so far.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. At first I was like, yeah, definitely. But then I realized that's not what's happening at all. What happens is we tell stories without dropping names on the podcast. Yeah. And on probably about every 4 weeks, Brennan Robards will be like, that was about me, right?
It's like, now everything's about you. Well, you just name dropped him just now.
It usually is, though.
Love you, Brennan.
It is. Sometimes it is. Usually we'll drop his name if we are talking about him. But sometimes if he does, we're like, we're talking about me. And we're like, well, we weren't, but now that you mention it, we could have. I mean, you can take it as we were if you want, because it's true.
No, it's careful to be careful. I'll have one quick story about that. It was a Tuesday Artmosphere mic, and I I brought a first date with me, which, hey, you're going on a first date, go on dinner into an open mic where you're about to do comedy to like a few people. That's a great,
that sounds like a bad idea.
Oh, that's a great recipe for success. Well, I wasn't thinking, okay? I was just like, you know what? I got a date with me. Let me do some of like some decent material that I know kind of usually works most nights. So I did a joke that y'all may hear where essentially the premise is a girl sticking her finger up my butt.
Yeah.
I did that joke, which then leads into sharing porn together, and then me basically like pulling up her mom's Facebook page, like masturbating to her mom's Facebook page, and not thinking about it. Well, I had this poor woman there. Everybody looks at her thinking the joke's about her. Turns beet red, and I felt immediately awful about it because I was not thinking about any of that, because to me it's a fake story. Of course I didn't pull up a mom's Facebook page.
Right. Even if you had jacked off to her mom's Facebook page, you wouldn't show it to her.
Show it to her. I totally did. No,
you show it to your buddies.
Yeah. But it's just
so when did y'all break up?
Well, there was no second date. I'll tell you that much.
I don't think that's happened. But going back to the other scenario, as far as like family members getting upset, when I was early on, and when I was too early in my comedy, the first year to really be able to defend it, I told my sister some of the jokes that have eventually become mainstays in my comedy that involve my dad that don't even involve my sister. Yeah, and she got so uncomfortable and didn't laugh and like didn't give me any sort of encouragement at all that it might be funny. And I did have to at some point realize this is just in fact, I think she pretty much told me she's so close to it, and some of the stuff is so hurtful for her as far as just growing up with my dad.
Yeah. Did you just tell her like what the jokes were, or did you like let her hear?
Oh no, yeah, it would have been better to let her hear a recording.
Yeah, like let her hear like when it does well.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've never been able to let her hear a recording. She's only ever heard joke premises, or you can't explain a joke. Like you got to tell.
Yeah, do it on stage to get.
That's when people like when we message stuff like, "What do you think about this?" A lot of the time, I'll say like, you can know right away sometimes like, "Oh, that's a really funny premise" or whatever, or "Oh, that has legs." But even like if I'm not sure, like I'll never say anything negative because I'm reading it on text. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not the right kind of. It's not being delivered right, you know? So if I don't have anything constructive to add, I just won't add anything because you don't know, you know?
I'll sometimes help out like a new comedian on like at the station or something if they have like a quick fix thing where I've noticed something that could really help benefit them. And it might be something mechanical, like, you know, like take the microphone out the mic stand, move it behind you instead of leaving, you know, like little things like that. And I'll maybe tell them like, hey, look, I really like this, but you know, cut out the fluff here. I think would be a great thing. But most of the time when people are like, hey, I have this idea for a bit, I'll usually cut them off and be like, try it out on stage, see what happens. Yeah. That's usually my answer for everything. But yeah,
I just don't think, I mean, unless you have like Maggie would always encourage us, like you need to have somebody, because she has like one or two people in a little group text message, and when she has something, she hits this kind of the same trusted people with it. She won't just ask anybody. And I find more often than not that when first years and second years are asking us what we think about their jokes, it's like, I'm pretty sure you know on some level that if you're asking us, you know there's something missing, you know, because like otherwise you just get up on stage and do it. Right. So I think you're right. I think ultimately they do just need to get up on stage and do it. Every once in a while you might be able to save somebody the embarrassment if they're clearly...
Yeah, they say something blatantly like, oh, don't
like
say that.
Maybe don't say that word on stage. Are you crazy? No. I've said that to a person. I'm not going to say what word, and I'm not going to say what person.
Yeah. You know. I don't think the community is going to appreciate it.
Lives in Lake Charles.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Lake Charles, because I wanted to ask you about some of the book shows that you've done out there, because I've heard good things, and I think we have one coming up, or I have one. He's done several. The only times I've done book shows out there have been at OBs and at daiquiri shops, but this is a little bit kind of a step up. Okay. And so I'm curious about your experiences with doing comedy on those book shows in Lake Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, Jacob Guidry killing it when it
Yeah.
comes to just booking. I mean, he is making something out of nothing out of Lake Charles. He really got to think that through. I mean, he started this thing. He started producing early on in his comedy career.
Yeah.
Like he has he's young too. I think he's like 25 now, or just had his 25th birthday.
Yeah.
The amount of business sense he has to book these things.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I did a charity show at the station, and I produced it and stuff like that. And that's so much pressure to produce shows. And the fact that he's just like pumping these things out, like doing all these things, networking, getting with all these companies, I think it just shows a testament to his work ethic. So I'm just giving you flowers, Jacob. You deserve them. But doing those shows, I really like the Lake Charles shows and the venues that he does. Like Panorama, he's done some, was it Library Riot?
Yeah.
I really like that room. I know for me, when I've done a lot of the Lake Charles shows, I did a lot of them more when I was a newer comedian and I wasn't as experienced as I am now. I felt like I personally didn't get too much of a good reception, just because, again, like you said, I'm very pun heavy. I'm very stupid, goofy, you know. But I think it's a beautiful scene, honestly, like the book shows out there.
Yeah.
And I really like him. And he puts, we used to do open mics at a laser tag arena. Love that. He even did a few book shows within like the actual like arena part. Like they took out all the obstacles, they put a stage there, and they filled it up. They filled that entire laser tag arena. And it's just like, it's that little bit of like I don't know, just that business sense to like, yeah, who thinks of that? It's like, let's go ahead and do a comedy show in a laser tag arena. That's what I love about it.
Great idea too.
Yeah.
Do like a show or an open mic, but everybody still has to wear the thing. So then if the comedian up there starts doing bad, like the audience just like shoots him down. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
You have to put some fog in there so that you could see it, because that would make it a lot more fun.
Yeah.
But
and that shit with DT, like if that's how you like, or just just have the host have it, and that's how you can light them.
Oh God!
It's like, well, I've just been shot. I only have 1 minute left of y'all. So what's the deal with airline food?
I love that idea. Yeah, that's cool. One of the things that stuck out for me when I was getting to know Jacob on his episode, and I think just before and after as well, was that he wasn't a fraternity. I didn't rush. I didn't do any of the Greek stuff. I think there is really something about that business network building aspect of being in a frat. And of course, I'm sure he has some natural inclination toward that anyway. I mean, some people just, that's how their mind works. But I think that also gives you a leg up of just hanging around with other people that are like-minded, and the community building aspect of being in the Greek community on a college campus. Because he kind of referenced that when he was talking about the build up to him getting into comedy.
Well, I also was in fraternity, and I don't have any of that. So I agree with you on the network. 'Cause I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of those same people even after college, and that ability to network and do stuff. But he was also he had like, you know, different. I believe his business was a Thicket, like, you know, way back, you know, when he was younger, earlier 20s. So it's like he's just. I feel like it's just one of those things where you have to be kind of risk averse and just or more prone to risk, and just being able to do a production of a show, because it's daunting. I have mad respect for Jacob, mad respect for JP Leonard, everyone who puts on shows consistently in the Louisiana area, because it's a lot to be like, oh man, what if people don't show up to this thing? Especially when it's like money at the door. Like, we got to do the marketing and get it on Facebook and get the word out. And if I don't get that done, we may not have a show. And that keeps you up at night as a producer, I'm sure. And so the fact that they just pump out so many shows, it shows a testament to their work ethic.
You know, I never thought about that, but yeah, like everyone I went to school with that went on to be in frats, I think they're all very successful. They have got nice houses, nice jobs.
Yeah,
they wear khakis a lot.
Some boat
they do.
shoes.
They all wear khakis. Yeah, they tuck their shirt in on the weekend.
That's it. It just they just get that LSU purple polo, go hit the walk-ons, and go home.
Yeah, most of them have season tickets.
Yeah. No,
yeah, I mean, part of it is like, well, if they were in a frat, then a lot of times, I mean, I don't know about all of them, but I do know there's some money involved in, like, you have to have some sort of solvency just going into it because it is there's an expense involved with it.
Yeah.
So that would kind of lend itself toward like, well, if they're already on a good start, they have a better chance statistically at doing better in their lives. But I think that the frat itself, the idea of like, we're going to make these relationships now in college and then we'll always be a resource for one another, you know, in our careers.
I would also say, I think it kind of drives home the point in college of developing social skills.
Yeah.
Developing those skills, even if it's not with your actual whatever fraternity or whatever, but just learning to build those skills there in that network, and then you can transfer that for whenever you go to a job or whatever, and you can, you know, start networking with employers and whatnot. So,
so I think Jacob probably just naturally has an entrepreneurial mindset, like what you talked about, with just embracing risk and being comfortable with that. So that's good for him. And I think that at this point, I remember like maybe 6 months to a year ago, it was like, hey, we all need to kind of recognize, but at this point it's like, it's just a well-known thing. Yeah. He's doing great and we're happy for him. And I think sometimes they partner, like Lafayette Comedy and Lake Charles will have like the same person go and do like, you know, but I think that it's only a matter of time before you start to see him pulling in more like, you know, larger name comedians and doing shows there that are just completely independent of anybody else. Yeah. Because he's got the Houston market to pull from. So that's good.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're killing it, Jacob.
So we like to talk about aliens on this podcast just because
just have an alien podcast.
It's a very fascinating topic. But I think that there's been some stuff that's happened recently that I'm not even really as up on. So do you know what the deal? You mentioned something about Mexico, and I thought I saw something about somebody saying something Mexican alien bones somewhere in Mexico. Is that a thing?
Yeah, so it's like
about to make you clarify about Mexico.
Like we just stay silent. Right? No, me and Drew have no clue what you're talking about, Michael. Keep talking. I'm not too well versed in it either. Besides, like, just I get most of my news sources through memes nowadays. Yeah. So like, I gotta pretty much like backtrack and like reverse engineer whatever the meme is to what the actual news source is. But from my understanding, they found some aliens, and then found aliens, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, you know, take studies of this thing. And I'm sure y'all seen the pictures, and I don't think it's real.
It's a hoax. Okay,
most likely.
They look peculiar, but it's hard to tell though. They almost look like paper mache.
Yeah,
but supposedly they were found like in these mines or something, and they're like they're from prehistoric times, pretty much. I think, if not, maybe not prehistoric, but they're from a long time ago.
Yeah,
I don't know how long ago they're saying because of how they could tell by how deep they are, but they've been mummified. So that's the only thing is I don't know. I've seen like mummified stuff before, and it does look kind of like if you touched it, it would fall apart.
Yeah,
which is weird because it's supposed to be sort of the opposite. It's supposed to be preserved.
Yeah,
but it looks like
fragile.
I never touched it, but if you just look at it, it looks very fragile. So maybe that's it, and maybe it's real. I don't know. One of them had like you could almost see where he'd have like the beginning of a little penis. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. There you go.
I don't have anything else to say about that. I realized after I said it.
No, I think I heard somewhere. It's like someone I watch some stuff where people like to debunk like, you know, a lot of like paranormal stuff, very opposite of the History Channel, where they actually try to go into it. And I think for this particular one, that guy actually had tried to pass off some aliens before as being like these mummified remains. It proved to be like a hoax in like 2016 or something. And like the head, I remember this. It's so vivid because what he did was he took a llama skull and he basically took like the front part and flipped it to where it was the back part that would have been the face, and then they just had that as the alien skull. So I want to believe. I'm just saying, I really want aliens to be real. I love aliens. I want I want all of them in this country. Okay. All right. I love aliens.
And they can speak their language.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They can
I'll
keep
speak their language.
They can keep their culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I want to be real, but I'm always very
We'd ask them to respect the age of consent, but
I mean, well, what is that for aliens? Is it like dog years? We don't know.
And you can take everybody's job, just don't take ours. We like podcasting and doing comedy.
Yeah.
Oh man, a alien podcast would slap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just need Google Translate.
There you go.
So I'm with you. I want to believe.
Yeah.
At this point, it seems like a statistical impossibility that there isn't something else out there.
If they were hot aliens,
Oh,
like you're a single dude, you smash.
it's the space pope reptilian. Of
Like
course,
you
I
wouldn't
smash.
you wouldn't have any kind of moral objection. You wouldn't think for a while, like
would it be almost like beastie? Like, I mean, no, we'd have to see like how humanoid are these aliens?
It has to be enough for you to catch a boner.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
like
bold of you to assume my threshold for a boner is really, really high.
But no, I'm saying as far as look human enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've never seen like a raccoon or something and be like, that's a hot, or a dog, even a dog, you know?
Right.
As cute as dogs are,
yeah,
I would hope anyway. You never saw one and you're like, that's a sexy fucking dog, you know?
You know, I could say that thought has never crossed my mind, which I mean, no disrespect to furries. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah. So we'd have to be able to, hopefully you would think that, I don't know, as far as people being attracted to aliens and them having to be humanoid, I've seen too much on the internet to realize that like there's this wide open landscape of people being attracted to all kinds of inanimate objects and you know, and
we've
things.
all fucked an inanimate object.
Like a very similar question that I actually had in the shower the other day was how far in our evolutionary line would it be before it would be considered gross to fuck? If that makes sense. Like, you know, because we're like the Homo sapien. How far in that little chart of monkey do we have to go
like,
before it's like, okay, this is where I draw my line at the one where they're slightly slunched over. Like,
if you saw like kind of like a real thick banging Neanderthal chick.
It's like,
if you could, you know, talk her into shaving.
That's a sexy shaved orangutan.
But other than that, she's got a little brow line, but she could still be cute, you know?
I'm a big proponent of body positivity, Drew, so you know.
We're more likely to like judge our friends for people that are human that they sleep with. You know,
that's
true. If she's a hot Neanderthal, you're probably gonna be into her, and there's no shame, right?
If you told, I'd be that's cool, dude.
Just keep going down the line. It's like full on. You went full on monkey, like tail and everything, dude. You're disgusting.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah, that's gross. Come on, man. Have some self-respect.
Oh, banging aliens.
Banging aliens.
That's not exactly the reason that I want to believe, but it does open up some interesting ideas.
Well, I mean, I more care about the technology and the space travel, but sex is great too.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed this. I've been working on my hosting skills, but I was going to try to transition this into talking about his dating and social life.
Oh,
that's what I was doing.
Look at this.
See, I think I'm just being nasty over here.
Segues.
All right. Well, now we're on that topic.
All right.
Great job. So what? How's it going? Because we've both been married for a while and we're a little older, but not to each other. Just to clarify. It's a question.
People in the pod who don't
that's
know.
out there. But you know, being married guys, when I hear people talking, they stand up about dating apps and just the experience of being out there now, it doesn't sound great. And so I'm curious, like, what your experience is like.
I mean, it's one of those things. I'll be honest, it's not so much in my front focus right now. It's dating. It really is my career growth, my comedy. You know, I have a bunch of other buckets that I've been putting my time and attention to, and not so much dating. But I mean, if you're curious, just as a married person's perspective on like what the current dating climate is. I feel like more people are just having more dating partners there. You know, it used to be you would date maybe 2 or 3 people and then you would find your person, lock it in, and now it's marriage. Now people, I feel like they kind of have this weird thing of like, okay, this was a really great date and everything went well, but who knows if the next person I meet on this dating app is even better than that.
Right.
And then it just becomes this thing where no one's really settling down, and it just ends up you know, ending up with a bunch of people single looking for the next best thing. And so I don't know.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that FOMO is a big thing and too many options is a big thing. And so nobody will settle into anything.
Which in a weird way, yeah, it is a negative trait. But I also think that if you go through that trial and tribulation and then genuinely find your person, and then you're less prone to, you know, have a wandering eye, you know?
For sure.
Because, yeah.
There was a weird thing when I was single when I was younger, and then when I was single before I met my wife. There was it was a much different thing to where when I was, the first time I was single, you used to be able, especially to be more upfront, or at least women were more upfront about like if they just want to bang.
Yeah.
Guys were a little different because you'd be you want to bang a chick. So if she'd be like, no, I want to relate, you'd lie to her. But women didn't have to do that. If a woman told a guy, like, I just want to bang, dudes wouldn't be like, no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it got to a thing where I found a lot with the women, they would go the second time around before I met my wife. Women would go through a thing where they would be like, I'm not looking for just a hookup and all this. And I want, when they put it out there like that. And then you would have sex with them. And then they would like not want to talk to you. And sometimes they'd either ghost you or they'd eventually be like, well, I'm not ready. Where it's like, why didn't you just fucking say that from the beginning? Like, why do we have to go through all the effort? Why do we have to talk so, like, why do we have to do all this? Like, you wasted so much of my time. Like, don't you know, men? You could just say, let's just bang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So where at one point I was like, this must be what, like, chicks feel like. Because at one point I was like, I feel like used. Yeah. Like, I feel like an object right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, dating apps and all that stuff is so integrated into social media. If you ever download a dating app in the present age, like you can link your socials. Like it's like you could have your Instagram feed pop up at the bottom of your Tinder or your Bumble, or you can have all kinds of stuff. So if you have like a bio as a woman that's just like, I'm just here to smash, chug cock, and have a good time, like, you know, well, at some point maybe your friends or friends of friends will see that profile and it'll kind of come around to bite you.
Yeah,
and it's just like,
I would not link those things though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if things have changed in the last few years I've been with my wife, but back then you wouldn't link. You didn't want. You didn't. I guess it was a little different back then because I guess maybe the online dating was newer.
Yeah.
Because lots of times there would end up being a discussion like, are we going to tell people how we really fucking met?
Yeah, like there was almost like some shame.
There was a little bit. Because at the time, people just thought it was weird to meet someone on the internet.
Yeah.
And now I don't think it's that weird. It makes perfect sense we're all on the internet.
Yeah.
But back then you wouldn't link them things. So there really was.
You'd be
like you could just, or even if you don't want to put it on your profile.
Yeah.
You can let me know privately if we're messaging each other, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely different. I mean, and now you're starting to see people where all they know is just meeting through dating apps and stuff like that. Like I'm probably the first generation where, like, because when I turned 18, like Tinder came out the next month, and I feel like Tinder was really the one that blew everything up when it came to the online dating scene. And so I was, you know, a guy who was, you know, for most of my life, big, overweight, like a fat guy, didn't, you know, get really much attention from the ladies. I then went through this process, lost a bunch of weight, you know, got a little more confidence, and then the dating apps exploded on the scene, and then, you know, I kind of just started using them. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think they're more of a society net positive than a society net negative.
I feel that way about most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Most things, and even the internet. But
Mhm.
I remember whenever we first started carrying around cell phones.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a big thing with people were like, cell phones are terrible. Cell phones are terrible. And they would always point out like someone's shitty behavior. And I'm like, no, that person is terrible.
Outlier, yeah.
The phone is an inanimate object. I mean, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, I like having I told someone one time at work, a guy that we worked together, and he's like, the fucking cell phones. I'm like, dude, you realize, you know, like we alternate weeks being on call.
Yeah.
You know, we'd have to be here the whole time, right?
Exactly.
Like we both live too far away from this place. You'd have to stay here. If there wasn't a phone, you'd have to come in and sit here. The phone is the only way you get to go home. Like I love the phone.
Yeah.
I love people being able to reach me somewhere.
And those negative behaviors most of the time would also be instilled if phones didn't exist. Like they would just find it in some other way, like newspapers, like newspapers or magazines or whatever people did in the 90s.
People have like loud FaceTimes like in public and small. Like what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
If they were, then they'd be talking to you. Most probably, if not, you know what I mean.
They just want you to be in on their conversation.
Yeah, the phone didn't make them a piece of shit. They already were.
Yeah,
that's why they use the phone that way. You know.
Exactly.
So it's really phones don't kill people. People kill people.
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to say.
Getting really political over here, Michael. I don't like it.
I was saying it subliminally. I'll explain subliminal to you later. The key part of subliminal for it to work.
But one thing I did want to ask y'all is, you know, so like I'm a single guy, you know, but one thing I've always been curious about is I don't know how y'all do it where y'all juggle having like a family life, like having a wife and then children and then juggling that to do comedy. Like what's their general principle on that? Are they very supportive of it?
Yeah, you
like
have to have a good wife.
Yeah.
You have to have a supportive wife.
Yeah.
You're spending nights in bars and stuff. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Usually when a woman gets married, she doesn't want to be at home.
Right.
Seeing about a kid and then going to bed without you and you're out in a bar somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
I was just kind of curious a little more about, you know, y'all's dynamic and how that works. It's just, yeah, because I mean, if you both have wives that like, you know, are work through the day and the only times y'all really have free time is at night and then y'all are gone. I'm just curious how that.
We're both in kind of unique situations. I think that first of all, there's going to be some commonalities that we can all, every married guy in the scene can attest to. Yeah, we all go through that. And then it branches off into what's unique about it for us. I would say that with Drew and I in particular, Drew's self-employed and his wife works from home full time, right? Yeah. Okay. And then I'm not self-employed, but I work 3 out of 5 days from home. And during the pandemic, it was full time from home. Okay. And my wife is a stay-at-home mom. And so in our situations, we can see a lot of one another during the day so that it's not as bad. But for a typical 2-income situation where they're both pursuing careers and then trying to raise their kids in those few hours that you're all home together at the end of the night, and then your husband's running off to go do comedy. I mean, if you think about it, we're going to be on stage for 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm gonna plan to start kind of getting into that where we're
gonna be hanging out for hours,
and hours. Yeah, it's not unusual for us to leave the atmosphere at midnight when they kind of kick us out at the end of the night. And I start kind of getting in that mode where I'm like home, but I'm really kind of like thinking about how I'm going to get out the door by like 6. Yeah. So that's a 6-hour block that I'm really not available for them. Yeah. So if I did not have the times during the day that we just kind of steal little moments to, you know, to do that kind of stuff, it would be tough. And I don't, Drew, I don't know, but my thing is, I read a lot of books about, I didn't want to be a parent. I spent my whole life knowing I'm never going to have kids. And then one day I was like, okay, but I do want to get married. And the type of person that I want to marry is probably going to want to have kids. I don't see any way around that. So I started trying to get used to the idea. I read books about how to be a good dad and all this stuff. And it came down to, hey,
those books are garbage, dude.
A lot of them are. And it didn't help me. Those books did not really help me, but therapy helped. Okay. And what I found was that most people there's so much information out there these days about how to get parents that are like, if you've got a co-parenting situation, it's very common, is divorced and you're trying to figure it out. And there's a big emphasis on how do dads take the little bit of time that they get with their kids and really make that work. And honestly, what they figured out is that it's actually not that unusual for the dad to just not be around that much in a good or a bad situation.
Okay.
And so all dads, you know, whether you're running out and doing comedy at night or whatever the case may be, it's about learning how to make the smaller amounts of time be more meaningful, and to, because I mean, I'm sorry, but like I still know a lot of people that once you've been married for a while, the relationship, the marital relationship, kind of just takes a back seat to everything else that's going on. It's particularly for primarily children, but even other things too.
Yeah.
And so your wife, you not being around for her, she's more likely to not really be sweating that so much as you not carrying your weight. So as long as you're taking care of your responsibilities and making those small, 30 minutes, 20 minutes of concentrated time with your kids, make it count, make it be like very focused, intentional time, you can get away with really just not having a lot of presence in the home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Part of for me too is like my kids don't live, they live with their moms and then they come on the weekends.
Okay.
So that makes it a little different, but at this, it would be the same shit though, because if they would be there all the time, I'd see them more.
Right.
So I'd still be going out. But like on their weekends, I'll kind of, I mean, if I get a gig, I'm not going to not do the gig, but I'm not going to like podcast all day. When they're not there, like we've done it before where we do if you do 2 podcasts on a Saturday, you're putting in like an 8-hour day, really.
Yeah.
The logistics of getting ready and then in between and all that. If they're here on the weekend, I'll sneak out and do one maybe, but I'm not going to spend the whole day away from them. You know, if the podcast made money, it would be a different thing because there's lots of times.
Yeah, like a job.
There's times they come on my weekend where I have to go to work because that's how we survive and that's part of it. But right now, there's no money coming out of this. And other than that, as far as with me and my wife, I don't really see it much different than if I was going hunting. Or playing golf or anything like that. The only thing is I'm in bars. And
right.
There's drinking and women in bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I've never done anything. Like before I started comedy, I've never shown any kind of want to go hang out in bars. You know, not without my wife anyway. It's one thing maybe if it's there's a buddy in from out of town this weekend and maybe the guys will go out or something. But, you know, my wife knows I've never wanted to just go hang out in bars instead of be home with her.
Right. And I know you sometimes bring your wife out with you.
Yeah, whenever.
On the night. Yeah.
Like if my stepson,
make it kind of a night.
Yeah, my stepson's
out.
home. But sometimes if he goes to his dad's or his grandma's or something, then she'll come out.
Yeah.
And if it's a big gig, if he is home, and it's a big gig, then if it's a big enough gig, we'll find him a babysitter because she wants to come, you know?
Yeah, Bridget's awesome. Sometimes when I'm working the door at Club 337, and Drew and Bridget come to the show, she'll just voluntarily come and help me do some of the wristband.
Yeah, she likes supporting the scene and everything.
Well, I love that.
Because she's been to enough stuff where she kind of knows everybody and she likes everyone, you know?
Yeah.
So she kind of feels like a part of the scene.
Yeah,
she's not a comedian, so helping work the door is her contribution, you know?
And she's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
She's just very, she's very
and like I said too before, I've never like the whole time we've been together, there's never been anything like I've never had a wandering eye.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've never given her any reason
to
worry. She's more worried about like driving home and stuff like that. But she's not worried about most women, if I wouldn't be doing comedy, I think she would be like, why do you want to do
bars?
That? Yeah.
But she sees the passion.
Because hanging on bars isn't a hobby or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like she sees the passion that you have for it. Like someone doing music or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like really, yeah.
And there's something to show I have something to show, and there's progress. She can see progress, you know?
Yeah. And I just think there's something great about anybody that you date where they have a passion in something and they want to share it with you, or at least like, you know, have you be in on it. You know,
For sure.
I think that's a way different than just going to a bar and drinking some Michelob Ultras in your Cisco uniform and call it a day.
I support all her hobbies.
Yeah.
Washing clothes, doing dishes, vacuuming.
All those things that she loves to do.
Ironing my sleeves. I fully support all the things that make her happy.
You know what I will tell you is just don't fuck up is the thing, because
Of
I
course.
had a friend. I can't, I'm just naming names on this podcast. It's never going to happen. But
No names.
when I was in a different industry that was very much like, well, when I was playing music for a living, there was a guy and he was a really good musician, and he fucked up. And then whenever we were out, if his wife wasn't there with us, watching him like a hawk, it was miserable. We went on tour for a month and it was absolutely the worst, because like once they had this whole accountability system that they had to develop where he basically could never be anywhere without having to call her and tell her, this is where I'm at. I'm leaving this place, go to this place. And it's a lot. And it just ultimately it didn't work out for them. And they were married.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the thing is trust is so very important.
And that's not a thing. I mean, that doesn't worry us. It doesn't worry me, because I have I mean, I see women and we're like, there's a thing where like, damn, she's hot. You know,
but that's where the thought stops.
It never goes any further than that. Like I have the thought of touching another woman, doing anything with another woman makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't have. It's never like, man.
It's not a thought. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever see a woman and be like, well, if I wasn't married, I used to think that in my other relationships. Like, man, if I was single right now, everything's completely different with her.
It sounds like you're, what's the word? In a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I mean, somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. I don't all have issues, but yeah. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Or you could always take the route like we just had two new comedians join the scene, like Delaney and Chandler, where they both are doing comedy.
I don't know. I think she'd rather sleep with another man than
He's talking about Bridget.
Then my wife, I'm saying my wife, then us both do comedy. Like if we both did comedy and then like she's getting all the gigs and I'm not. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because when we had Dwayne on, Alana was with him, and we ended up just setting up 2 mics for him. And they talked about, we asked them like, what is it like, you know, kind of those situations where maybe you're both riffing and then one of you comes up with something, but you're not really sure who started it and you both want the joke. And they're like, that doesn't really happen because they don't really, I guess it's a style thing. They don't
write
style.
the same type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, you're with each other. Y'all are spending hours together at a comedy show. I mean, I would get like the last thing you really want to talk about is more comedy when you're together. You kind of want to have that, because you're going to be talking about comedy together regardless when you're at the shows. Right. So and I feel like you get that out your system a lot too.
Yeah, and part of it too is I like my wife coming with me. I like it when she comes to shows and open mics and stuff like that. But I also like there is a good thing too about when she doesn't come. There is you know what I mean? It's good. It's just like her and her friends.
Yeah.
Usually once a week. It's like, hey, me and this friend we're going to go, or even a group of girls, we're going to go to the Mexican restaurant. We're going to go out. Usually they'll just go eat and come home, but sometimes they'll stay out late, you know? But sometimes she needs to go have a life and have fun with some friends without me, you know? And comedy, I get both sometimes because she can't come. I get that. And I have other friends too I had before comedy, but I don't see them all the time as much as I see y'all, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a little getaway, you know? Sometimes you gotta kind of, as the fondness makes the heart grow something. I don't know.
Just absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. While I was saying, I was like, this is like these words are where they go at all.
You can always rely on me to remember what the old cliche is.
Yeah.
So, Garrett, we like to wrap up each episode with a hypothetical question for our guests. It's a question that will hopefully illuminate what in your life rivals stand up in like importance and meaning. And I've thought about what I might trade in my life to like get what I want as a comic. And it occurred to me that I would I would give up sex for comedy. I'd never have sex with another person again if in exchange for that, all of my comedy dreams would come true, like exactly the way that I want them to. So if you had to make a deal with the devil to give up something very costly so that all your comedy dreams would come true exactly the way that you wanted them to, what might that be?
Okay. So, I mean, I've listened to the podcast pretty much every episode at this point. I've heard you say this question many times, and I've had a little time, especially on the drive over here, to think about that. And I'm going to answer the question, but first, I would actually say I'm not too sure I would even take a deal regardless. The reason why is because you're basically saying, what would I give up for all of my comedy dreams to come true? Just build it out in a perfect fantasy reality. This is how it would happen, right? And I'm reminded of this old Twilight Zone episode, and I'm going to spoil it. But if you haven't seen it, it's from the 1950s. That's on you, okay?
Yeah, you've had enough time.
But it's this episode where this guy, he dies, and he essentially goes to heaven, and he's a big avid gambler, and he pulls the slot machine and he keeps winning. He's like, this is amazing. I'm winning every time. Well, after a while, he just gets bored and depressed. And he's just like, when I win every time, there's no fun, there's no variance. It's just boring now. And then the whole reveal is that he was in hell the entire time, right? So to say to have all my comedy dreams come true, I think this sounds awful to say, but I almost feel like you need a level of pain and suffering in order to truly appreciate and become a good comic, but also to cut your teeth and develop those skills.
Yeah.
So if I were to do everything and just be like, oh, okay, everything will come true, and I maybe I don't have to put in the effort, or, I don't get kicked in the teeth as much, I feel like that's robbing yourself of the full stand-up experience, if that makes sense.
It does.
But to actually answer your question, if I could, still build it out, what would I give up, right? I would honestly give up all my other hobbies. Every single little hobby I have, if it was only just stand up after work, I would be okay with that. So like some of my hobbies right now, like I'm a big video game guy. I love video games. My little 3D printer, my crafts, my, martial arts is another big one. Pretty much any hobby I have, I would be completely fine with just completely wiping the slate clean, getting rid of everything, and just be 100% streamlined comedy.
Yeah.
And that is it for the rest of my life. Literally be such a one-dimensional person.
Yeah.
I'm more or less done that, really.
Yeah, I'm kind of halfway there too.
I don't have enough time now to have other hobbies.
Yeah,
like you said, with us being married and having kids,
exactly.
I've kind of had to make this the hobby.
Well, so I'm curious, what would it look like for you? Like, what are your comments that you're willing to share with us? What are those dreams?
So as of right now, we all kind of have like our big, star-studded dreams that we have. Really, right now, my only goal is to do my best to become undeniably funny. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Figure out, whether it be through writing, repetition, whatever, become undeniably funny. Because I know if I put all of my weight, all of my focus into that, the rest will come. Once I become undeniably funny, then I can start to look at, okay, well, maybe I can market myself a little better, because I don't ask to be on shows. If someone asks me, great, but I'm not gonna I'm not going to market myself because I don't feel like I'm at the point where I can say I am undeniably funny in every instance, in every scenario, for the most part. And until I get to that point, that's it. So in the meantime, I'm happy just cutting my teeth, getting beat up in the comedy scene on doing open mics until I just hone myself until that point.
Do you roll jiu-jitsu?
I do jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never, my daughter's into it. She would like to try to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, cause she doesn't, well, whatever. That's like a whole other thing. We can talk about that later. But the point is there anybody that because I know we all have sort of like comedy mentors in the scene that we look up to. Is there anybody who you're like, when you think undeniably funny, and then I'll kind of, once I get to that point, then I can start looking at more like, how do I be more strategic? Yeah. Is there anybody that you can think of that would be an example of someone who's undeniably funny at this point that's at that level?
Like in our scene
in the neighboring scenes, just somebody.
Yeah, like
in
our like Louisiana. Ooh, that's a great question. Because we all, I mean, at the end of the day, we all have room for improvement. But obviously, your last guest, Tyler, right? He's, I feel like he can, like he says, he builds out his sets, and I agree with him when he says he's probably the best at building out a set and doing that stuff. But even he says, like, look, we all have different things where we think other people can do other stuff. But I think he can be undeniably funny throughout the case. I think Joshua Jordan, I mean, look, he moved to Houston. He's started around the same time I did, and he's killed the Stone versus Drunk versus Sober. He can do well at the shows he does, and I think he's getting to that point. I can't wait to see where his career takes off in Houston and how he goes.
I think he's a special case.
I think, absolutely.
I think he's the type of person that he's one that it wouldn't be fair for anyone else to compare their career to their comedy career to his. Like, no, he's the exception to the rule.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I don't like to compare myself. I mean, this is going to sound like a cliche bro thing to say, but I really only compare to myself to who I was yesterday. Right. And as long as I'm progressively getting better incrementally, even if it's at a snail's pace, which some days I feel like I'm making big strides, some days not so much. Right. As long as I'm slowly developing at my own pace, because in my mind, I'm in it for the long run. I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. I don't feel like I'm going to quit ever, really, I could genuinely see myself being 70 years old, geriatric, getting rolled out onto the stage doing jokes, I genuinely don't see myself quitting anytime soon.
Anyone here watch The Twilight Zone?
All those people died. I'm sorry.
Which I have to say, I've been having a little bit of trouble, like focusing, because it hasn't left my mind. That whole episode, the way you describe that, where he thinks he's in hell. No, he keeps winning, and then it's not fun anymore. Yeah. And then he finds out that he's hell. Like, that's the dun dun dun. Yeah. Like how shitty TV used to be.
It's so cheesy.
It would be like, man, this sucks. I'm always winning. And then it'd be like, you're in hell. And it'd be like, oh, well, it's not so bad. I killed 7 people, just getting off light.
Didn't
the
they
whole family?
Didn't they reboot Twilight Zone in like the 80s or something?
They did.
Oh,
they did.
Sure,
I think they rebooted it a few times now. It's a good show. I love a good little psychological, like you said, some dumb old cheesy TV. I love that. Like there's a certain charm to that I do.
You're
love.
In hell.
It's like
the reaction would be the complete opposite. You'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't so bad. I can keep playing this slot machine.
I know.
Guess I'll just keep winning.
It looks like
I guess I'll keep going on stage and murdering all the time. No,
I killed I murdered every person I wanted to murder in life, and the worst thing is I win at gambling all the time.
There you go.
Now I wanted to go back because I've been waiting for someone to answer that question with that big sort of thing that we all know is part of the conversation, and you hit it as your first part of your response, which is that there is something inherently flawed about the whole concept of like, what would you give up if all your comedy dreams could come true? Because it is all about the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so the destination should not really, it's just the idea of skipping to the destination or knowing that it's all laid out and you can't fail.
Yeah.
That's actually, there's something inherently wrong about it. And so we use the question purely to say, to just try to figure out what's something in your life that tugs at you when you try to move towards comedy. Maybe you're moving away from something else that's also really important to you that causes that strain or that tension. Because I completely agree with you that it really doesn't make sense to have any sort of like nepotism or whatever that leads to you, getting an opportunity.
And it's a fun question, but it is flawed in a way too, that some of the answers I've heard people give, I think that at a different point in their life, they would give a different answer.
Mm-hmm.
Or at a certain point, they would maybe regret it.
Mm-hmm.
Or not regret it, because then it messes with the reality of the question. But I'm just saying, I think some of these people, they give an answer now. If we ask them the same question like 10 years from now, they would say something different,
Yeah, but definitely, I mean, comedy
which makes it a good question, because we can when we have repeat guests, we can ask it again.
Yeah, how has it changed?
Yeah, how has it
changed?
changed?
And see, like last time, how do you feel now about it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So but to answer your question, mainly hobby, because it's true. That's what it's been pulling me away from. I literally wake up, I go to work, get off around 5, I go hit a workout at the gym, and by that time it's time to go to whatever comedy open mic, and then it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock by the time I get home, and I'm going back to bed, starting the process all over again.
And you mentioned like dating not really necessarily being like a big like focus at the forefront.
Yeah.
And so it reminded me, like, have you looked into Stoicism at all? Like, do you have any sort of, does Stoicism have any attraction for you?
Yeah.
What is that?
I would do if y'all don't already know, I would do a terrible job of explaining it, because I don't really know how to explain it.
Word, but I've never heard that. Like,
Stoicism is really more the idea of like not being ruled by your emotions and being more like logical and making wise, thought out decisions and stuff like that. But there's so much more to it.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
We were all trying to do it.
It's almost like, it's kind of like Stoicism is like a way of life it's not religion, but it is like if there was a halfway point between being completely non-religious and secular and having no guiding principles at all, or being like super religious. Stoicism is in the middle, because it's a lot more than just what I explained.
Or in we all want to be. I'm
gonna look it up. You go
just think practically and only do the practical thing, but.
Yeah,
but we don't all we say we all want to be that, but if we made every decision like that, we wouldn't get married. Probably we wouldn't have children. Like, which is some of the best. Like, not every decision you make is supposed to.
And sometimes I wish I was a little less like that. I wish I was just like, screw it, take some risk, do some stupid stuff, But sometimes I'm like, I'd like to get all my ducks in a row before I make a decision.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of sounds like a pretty chicken shit way of living to me. I hate to
what the hell, Michael? What you doing,
I hate to pass judgment on a lifestyle I just learned about.
But Stoics.
All right, here's a simple terms explanation. It says, in simple terms, Stoicism teaches us to focus on the things we can control, our thoughts, emotions, and actions, while accepting the things that we cannot, such as the actions of others or the natural course of events going on in the world around us. So that's a little bit AA. It's kind of like, sounds a little bit like, the AA prayer or whatever.
Yeah, but which, I mean, sounds pretty good.
It's based on Greek philosophy.
But to kind of answer that and kind of to wrap it back into comedy, 100%. And just to kind of bring it up into comedy terms again, when I'm on stage, or say I have like a bad set or something like that, you'll never hear me say something like, oh, well, it was a dead audience, or such and such, or maybe the last person killed it, and because of that, I didn't do a good job, or something like that. A lot of times it would come down to us like, man, they were really hot off of that last comedian, and I just didn't say the right words or get their attention enough to be able to do a proper set or something like that. I always bring it back into what I personally could do differently compared to blaming it on this or that. Because the comedy ego in me thinks like, well, there could have been some combination of words or something I could have done to have changed the outcome of what happened.
Yeah, I think we kind of both,
Yeah.
from talking, I think that's kind of how we try to be too.
Yeah.
To not like blame a bad, like if you have a bad set, not blame it on things that you have like, well, there wasn't an audience. Sometimes it's good to keep you grounded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where so you could be like, oh, it wasn't as good as the other night, but it's like, yeah, there's only 4 people here. Like you can't get any more laughter than 4 people laughing.
Right.
But what I'm saying is like where like I don't ever want to blame me doing badly on something, because if something's out of your control, it's out of your control. If anything, at the very least, if I had a bad set because of something out of my control, well, I fell short because I need to know how to fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Part of being a great comedian is knowing how to overcome whatever unpredictable thing that could happen to make you have a bad set.
And then you also know in a weird way, intuitively, when you've done the best you possibly could with the environment you're in. If you know for a fact that you've done the best you could and you're not going to feel bad. You're not going to have that weird gross feeling that you have after a set when you're like, oh, I could have done this or that. I did everything to the best of my ability at the skill level I am now. And I couldn't have asked for anything different. That's it, you know. And sometimes it's going to be really great, and sometimes it's, there's 4 people in the audience, but at the end of the day, it still comes back to you.
Yeah, I'd agree. Well, let's get your dates and socials out there. Do you have any upcoming dates you want to plug or any events?
Really, right now, I'm just working on getting better, cutting my teeth at the open mics, but as the segue, we do have our open mic every Wednesday at the station. Make sure to sign up by 8:30. We start the show around 9-ish. We can do it on comedy time. We're going to keep that comedy train rolling. And then when it comes to socials, I guess I'm more active on Instagram more than anything. It's Garrett _does stand up. If you want to come check me out, follow me. You can. You don't have to. I don't really post that much, but I need to. Again, I suck at marketing. Trying to get undeniably funny, then I'll market. But
you've got the voice for it.
But
Garrett with 2 R's and 2 T's.
Best way to spell it. None of this weird 1 T crap.
That's
Those
right.
are the worst. Don't trust those guys with the 1 T Garretts.
Take your ass out of here.
Yeah,
Get your ass out of here.
Yeah, low T having ass.
All right. Well, you guys keep plugging away at it, and we'll see you next week.